Okay, well, hey, that's a good note to get started on, I think. Uh, the natural beauty of the natural world, and I want to say thanks to everybody for coming and joining us here. We've been doing community calls for the various technologies that I've been building for What's Up with That and for Hawkeye, which are real complementary here now for a while. But we're taking it to a whole new level because we've been growing the team, and I've been getting some help. And I want to start out today with some introductions. There's enough of us signed up. I think we've got maybe 56, 57 people registered, which is just an absolute delight. I want to ask,
Hi.
hey, Jeremy, uh, I want to ask the core team here that's been working on this call to say a brief hello, and then I want to invite other folks who are in attendance to introduce yourself in the chat and like let us know who you are and drop any links that you want to share. And I'd be real curious to know, what brings you here. And we're curious, but I think that everybody in attendance is liable to be interested too, to see like what kind of like-minded people, what kind of inspiring people, what kind of relatable people, who are our peers who are here on this call. I really love any little intro that you can offer. I'll start and say I'm Marshall Kirkpatrick. I'm the founder of Hawkeye and What's Up with That and Earth Catalyst, various brands we go under. And the reason why I'm here is that 20 some years ago, I discovered technology that would automatically check pages around the internet for me for anything new and bring it into one central place where I could consume that information and take action on it. And I have been wanting to bring the power of that to others in the tech space and in the social impact and climate space ever since. And this is the newest manifestation of that. So that's my quick personal intro. I want to ask the newest member of my team helping me out here, Tracy Rogers Brandt. Tracy, would you say hello and introduce yourself?
Absolutely. Hello, everyone. I'm so excited to be here with you all today. I started working with Marshall about 2 weeks ago and was blown away by the technology. I am so excited for what he's going to walk us through and how Mark is using the technology. And my through line, I have a crazy 3 decade career, and I would say the through line is building relationships, community, and ultimately kind of change making and driving behavior. And I have everything from regen farming, economics, tech behind me. And my side hustle right now is trying to bring to life a pilot to explore a new economic philosophy and system I call regenerism. So you can read my flagship Substack, which I'll put in the chat.
Good.
And I will kick it over to Darby.
That's so good. Yeah, thank you. Darby?
Thanks, Tracy. Thanks, Marshall. Hello, everybody. My name is Darby. I'm coming to you from just outside of Austin, Texas. Marshall and I began our adventures together about 16 years ago, 2013. Yep, that my math is on. And I came to Little Bird as part of the Pi incubator experiment, which is where I also met Michelina. Hi, Mick. And we've been friends ever since. I'm super excited to bring my background in sustainability and really operationalizing the vision is what I bring to the fold. And I'm here to help onboard new clients. And so I'm really excited to meet more of you and understand what your use case is and how Hawkeye can help. Happy to be here.
Thank you, Darby. And we've got a special guest with us today. Well, all of our guests are special, but Mark Trexler is going to share more in depth a little bit in a little bit. But Mark, I wonder if you could offer an initial intro to yourself now.
Sure. Thanks, Marshall. I'm 38 years into working on climate change, and about 15 years ago started seriously transitioning away from the consulting world into the knowledge management world, based on my conclusion that we've got infinite information. It's just that the right information doesn't get to the right person at the right time to influence their climate change decision making, and have been working on that challenge in a number of different ways, which I'll briefly introduce in a bit. And one concept that we've developed over the years is that of climate chess. And we just pushed a new climatechess.com website yesterday that it would be great to have people check out. Thanks.
Thank you so much, Mark. Wonderful. Good. Well, and thanks everybody for introducing yourself there in chat. As you can see, we've got a real range of people who are working in tech, who are working in climate and sustainability, regeneration, people that we have personal connections with, people that we've cultivated connections with over the years, and some people that I know that I'm meeting for the first time. And lots of folks have an opportunity here to meet each other for the first time. I'll send out that link that I shared before with everybody's info, so you can see the amazing work being done here. But with that, I would like to transition over into a quick overview of the Hawkeye platform, the system that I've been building for network observation and publishing. And then we'll spend a little bit more time on the newest capabilities there. And then we'll shift over to Mark. And then we'll do a Q&A session that'll probably be the longest of all those sessions. But what in the heck are we talking about here in general terms? This is how I am describing Hawkeye, the system these days. It is a system of ecosystem intelligence that is highly personalized for you, and that you get to control the dials of both the input and the output. It's not someone else's algorithm. It is a system that we help you set up and run in order to monitor the work of your network. Whether that's you think of it as a target market or a network of peers or an ecosystem, a network of networks, whatever the case may be, people, organizations, and communities that make up your ecosystem. And these are sort of the four big buckets of things that live within it: mapping, monitoring, filtering, and then a new emerging and optional publishing opportunity. So I'm going to come out of this. I'm going to show you what it looks like in just the highest level terms. Let's see. The way that we do it with Hawkeye is we start with a mapping process where, when we work with organizations, we say, all right, who do you want to monitor? And this is an example of someone that came in and said, we're interested in these sorts of organizations, and then we take the initial seed examples and we expand out to find hundreds more organizations in various sectors that we're going to map out as your community of communities on whatever topic that may be. Then we wire up all of those organizations' websites and blogs and newsletters, YouTube videos, and more. And this is the back end of the Hawkeye monitoring system, where this is what I'm watching my ecosystem here. But then once I get everything all configured, I'm going to get an email each morning. And all of our subscribers get an email saying, all right, in this case, my network watched 600 updates. And according to my priority filters, these are the updates from across my network that are most relevant. And I can train it to give me more or less on on various topics, and then along the way, we're discovering new organizations that that you might want to add back into the watch list. So that's the mapping, the monitoring, the filtering, and then there are a series of publishing capabilities that get access right here. And I'm going to show you what they can look like. Just a range real quick. So we've got a magazine output, for example, a digital magazine of themes and stories. Here's news briefs and theme pieces gathered together from multiple links that have come through the listening pipeline. And that's all fully editable. This looks real tech focused here, and sure enough, it is. But just last night I was speaking to someone that said, "Does it have to be tech topics?" And I said, "Absolutely not. Check out this example of a different market, the world of emerging fiction focused on lived experience." And here is a magazine view of that. Other folks take their the output that comes through Hawkeye and repurpose it over into LinkedIn posts. For example, the organization Humanity Labs takes their weekly roundup of AI workforce news and uses it to populate LinkedIn posts. You can put it up on Substack. You can get an HTML email newsletter like this. And then the last kind of example output is historically these kinds of curation processes. One of my favorite was an organization called Social Policy Research Associates that used the listening to inform, to create the agenda for a podcast in their market that they used. So all kinds of different ways that that you can output that, and lots of different forms of action that can be taken. All right, so that's the initial high-level overview of Hawkeye and what it does.
Marshall,
Yes, Tracy.
there's one quick question that might be a good opportunity to answer.
Wonderful.
From Nathaniel. He was asking about open source versus closed.
So if I understand that question, let's see. Oh, is this open source or closed? That's a great question, Nathaniel. So this is a mix, really, of sorts of things. What I've taken is an open source RSS reader, and I have extended on it upstream and downstream with the mapping and the filtering and the publishing. There are parts of that I've open sourced, but generally speaking, right now it's closed. So, but if that's a conversation that you want to have in more detail, I'd love to talk with you about it. Great. Thank you, Tracy, for letting me know about that. All right, so now I want to show you some new specific capabilities that one of the things that's really important to us at Hawkeye is that the people who subscribe here, we collaborate with real closely. We have lots of onboarding conversations, and we really want to make sure to support the work that you are doing in your field. And a lot of times that leads to modifications of the product and new capabilities. And so there's a few things in particular that have come out of the collaboration that we have done with Mark, for example, that I want to highlight, including for some time when we were just getting started, Mark was asking about getting a Google Notebook LM podcast created with the stories that Hawkeye was discovering. And we came up with a way to do that, but I said, I think we can do even better. And so we built an in-house version that I call the Hawkeye newscast that each morning generates a podcast with multiple speakers that's grounded in your priorities and filters, that remembers previous editions, and does a roundup of one major story and multiple small stories. And it's a really fun way to start the day and get to consume this information by audio. And then Mark said, I would like to not just add my own links in addition to the way that the feed reader discovers these links, but I'd like to also add I'd like to add PDFs. And so, I'm hoping that I can share. Oh, here, let's see if this, we've got a bookmarklet here that is going to pop open let's say I've got a link. I'm hoping you can see my save this page pop-up that just showed up. And in this, so I can bookmark a link that I discover, and included in that, I can upload a PDF or a file of my own and include that into my research stream for analysis, for curation into a newsletter, and more. So that was cool, but then we kept going. And as I showed Mark some of the experimental stuff that I was working on too, this caught his eye in particular. This is a world model or a digital twin of thesis statements informed by multiple stories coming through my area of work at the intersection of tech and social impact. But you can imagine a model like this being built and then monitored persistently for any time these thesis statements are challenged. And Mark and I are going to put our heads together on this in the future. Lots of things possible there. But the big breakthrough that came in our collaboration so far with Mark was when he said, Marshall, we've got hundreds of organizations that we're monitoring here in Hawkeye, and it's picking up an awful lot of news, but I have some other methods that I'd like to bring to the table as well. Mark had built a Google Gemini search agent that was picking up a whole bunch of search stories about his sector that weren't being picked up by the organization-centric monitoring in Hawkeye. And I said, well, let's figure out how we can get that in there too. And what we did was build an API for Hawkeye that, and this, your eyes may cross if you don't work with APIs regularly, but if you do, I offer this to you as just a quick look at the new ability that we've got here in Hawkeye to bring just about anything into your research stream to monitor. We do that by API, and then I said, let's build in that same capability into the interface. So now you'll see, and if any of you have been using feed readers over the years, and perhaps you've shed a tear or two over the loss of Google Reader, whatever the case may be, here you'll see we have added a new capability where I can come in and say, I can add a URL to any website that I'm interested in. I'm going to say, find me some more like this, and then I can hit find, and Hawkeye is going to go out and find a way, any way, to monitor that that web page. So we discovered it's got an email newsletter, and you can pull in the email newsletter here into Hawkeye so that all of its updates get considered in your trend analysis and can be curated or sent through in your daily emails. You can watch the page for any changes, and we'll check it automatically each day and explain how it's changed and bring that into your stream. Or if there's an RSS feed, we'll discover it and pull that into the stream as well. So this is a pretty big deal, I believe, to go from, RSS feeds are waning. They're a niche interest whose star has faded perhaps, to now a new AI infused experience here that says we can now monitor anything in Hawkeye and as a part of our monitoring of networks. So I really, really appreciate that collaboration and inspiration from Mark. And I think it's going to serve everyone super, super well.
Quick question before we turn it over to Mark. There's a couple different questions for you, Marshall. Would you prefer to address them now?
Let's see if there is. It sounds like we've got somebody, maybe Stephen, whose mic is live, and so if you wouldn't mind checking that. But let's. It looks like we've got. Yep. Unless there's anything that you think could, Tracy. Yeah, I'm most inclined to answer those in Q&A
Okay,
here.
great.
Yeah, but thank you for asking. Okay, and so as a result of Operation Bring Everything into Hawkeye, there's just all the more stuff in here, and I have just added now the ability to tune your aperture, where I can say, for example, switch me over to a new setting. Right now I've only got information, the capacity to bring in really significant stories related to my specific projects that I'm working on. Or I can say, don't bother me unless there is a game-changing transformation in my field for some period of time. But I tend to live in exploratory mode, where I'm just going to get all the things that can come through the relevance filters from Hawkeye. So that is an overview of the map, monitor, filter, publish capabilities of Hawkeye, and just a sample of some of the most exciting new developments that Mark in particular has collaborated with us on and inspired. We've got other folks who are Hawkeye subscribers who have also inspired other capabilities that we'll bring on to other community calls too. But I want to switch us over to spend a few minutes with Mark, hearing from you, Mark, about our collaboration, if you'd like, but about your work and the strategic thinking and that you can offer us across different sectors here on this call.
Sounds good. So let me. I'm not going to bother with screen sharing and just sort of walk through a few key things. So to give you a bit of a context into my workflow, we started building, and Laura Kozlov, who's participating in the call, is my partner in this. We started building the climate web about 15 years ago as a curated sort of climate brain. And in fact, we built it in the brain software that I know Gil is familiar with. And we've added tons of stuff. It's an amazing tool. We have 150,000 human input sources in there at this point. and no one ever uses it because no one will learn how to use it. And until very recently, it didn't have any AI capabilities to be used that way. And so we've played with a couple of other tools, knowledge management tools over time, and recently have really gone all in on what was called until last week Gemini Notebook LM or Google Notebook LM. And now it's just called Gemini Notebooks. And Gemini Notebooks are an amazing, if you're not familiar with them, they're an amazing tool because you can put in sources of any kind of content, and then the AI will only use those sources in answering questions and generating infographics, et cetera. It's not going out into the internet and sort of pulling in misinformation on climate change. And to be clear, everything I'm talking about here is related to climate change, but I suspect it applies to lots of different topics that people are working on. And so at this point, we have about 100 climate change notebooks in Gemini, and they're all you can see much more at climatenotebooks.net. But we're building out this knowledge infrastructure where people can log into these notebooks, talk to the notebooks, get great answers from the notebooks because we've already curated the content that's in them. And so we're trying to build that out as a product to help people who are interested in climate change at all levels access much better and much more consistent climate information, because the amount of climate misinformation on the internet today is mind-boggling. So one of the things that we do with the climate notebooks is, as Marshall mentioned, is I have a whole series of Gemini agents that go out every night and ask about what are the best news stories in the last 24 hours for dozens of climate topics that are important to the idea of climate chess. And then all that information gets added to one of my notebooks, my daily intelligence notebook. And then from that, I generate a lengthy, and it tends to run 30 to 50 minutes every day in terms of an audio briefing from everything that the Gemini agents turned up overnight. And I listen to it at double speed, so I'm not actually spending an hour a day listening to it. But there aren't many people who want to listen to sort of a climate update every morning for 30 minutes. And so that's where the Hawkeye starts to come in terms of the idea of climate chess is how can we get the right information to the right person at the right time? And that means you might need different topics and different ways of communicating information. And it means you're not just working with 30-minute podcasts. And what Hawkeye allows us to do is to take a lot of the same content that we've already collected, move it into Hawkeye, and then generate daily newsletters that we can select the topics for. But those newsletters are basically just an update from the last 24 hours, very nicely done, very attractive, which I don't really care about listening to my 30-minute podcast. But if you're going to share information with people, you probably want something that's nicely done and attractive. And as Marshall mentioned, we've now added sort of the capability of audio podcast and listening to an audio version of those daily newsletters. And so the daily newsletter side of this is great. We're just now starting to think about how to roll these out. I mean, we've been working closely on this for the last few weeks. So the daily newsletters is one thing. But then or the daily briefings is what it's technically known as in Hawkeye. But then you can generate newsletters on pretty much any topic. And until recently, it was just stuff that was in Hawkeye. But as Marshall mentioned, now you can bring your own URLs, you can bring your own PDFs to build a newsletter. And so what we're planning to do, and just for example, this morning, I was working on a newsletter around the topic of climate change litigation, because a lot of people are assuming that climate change litigation will ultimately solve climate change by holding companies responsible for climate change. I think that's not going to happen. And I think we're headed in exactly the opposite direction. And so in this newsletter, I'm sort of fleshing out the hypothesis that the era of climate litigation is potentially coming to an end relatively soon because of court cases in the US, around the world. The Supreme Court next year may simply end the idea of litigation against fossil fuel companies. It's already taken the case, and this court is not going to be very, very friendly to the sort of the public interest in that case. But for the newsletter, what I can do is tell a story. So I can pick sort of the 10 stories or add the 10 links or PDFs that I want to, and then I can comment on each one and sort of make my point around it. I can generate a newsletter either in relatively basic HTML or potentially in the very attractive magazine format that Marshall showed. I can go in and edit it. But I can end up with a newsletter product for any climate topic, in this case, climate litigation, but carbon pricing, carbon offsets, whatever it might be. And it's not just a bunch of news from the last 24 hours. It tells a story that could go back to sources from a year ago, 2 years ago, but it tells a story that I'm in charge of, but it's AI assisted in telling the story, and then generates that as a product that I can share with anyone I want to share, whether as an email newsletter or as LinkedIn, as Marshall mentioned. And that's going to be a huge capability in terms of being able to tell effective climate stories more than I could by just sort of posting something on LinkedIn of my own thoughts and a sort of solid wall of text. But being able to refer to other stories, other links, other expertise, and telling a story around that particular topic, which I think is a very important topic. Again, we're just now rolling this stuff out. These are all brand new cutting edge features in many cases, and certainly my coming up to speed on this is sort of brand new cutting edge. And so you've got the newsletter side of this that we're working with and that has a huge amount of potential. And last, Marshall mentioned the digital twin. And it's not a digital twin in the sense that Amazon uses digital twins to map out its warehouses. It's more of a systems thinking guide to a topic, or that's what it will be as it gets fleshed out. And just for example, what we'll be able to do there is say, my worldview about where we're headed on climate change is based on these 30 or 40 or 50 hypotheses. That climate litigation is going to fail, that carbon pricing won't be high enough to drive a low carbon transition, that voluntary corporate actions will not scale to drive a low carbon transition. Whatever your hypothesis is around whatever your topic is, my thought, it's not there yet, but my thought is we'll be able to put all of those hypotheses into this systems thinking guide in Hawkeye. Hawkeye will then use all of the other content that's coming into Hawkeye for the newsletters, et cetera, to keep track of anything that challenges that hypothesis or affirms that hypothesis. So if it sees something where suddenly there's a huge climate litigation win, it'll flag that and say, by the way, your worldview around climate change might be wrong because of this thing that happened yesterday. And it'll do that across all the different elements of your systems thinking, in this case for climate chess, in a way that could be just mind-bogglingly cool. Not only cool, but effective in getting news out and helping people understand the big picture. Climate change right now is siloed into just hundreds of different silos where everyone's working on their own thing. There's no collaboration. That's why in the climate chess analogy, Team No Urgency has been eating Team Urgency's lunch now for about 15 years. And that's primarily because Team No Urgency knows it's a team and is playing as a team, whereas Team Urgency is just sort of playing like 1,000 chimpanzees trying to recreate Shakespeare. And so there's a key piece missing there. And what I'm hoping is that sort of the next iterations of Hawkeye will help solve some of these fundamental challenges of how do we play better climate chess with the infinity of information that's out there. Let me stop for now.
That's great, Mark, and I'm so pleased with this opportunity to work with you on this. It's hard, it's so important. Will you say a little bit more about if I'm understanding your position correctly, uh, your argument is that climate change is not a problem of too little information or too little motivation. It's essentially an information coordination challenge.
It's an information coordination and an information motivation challenge. The idea behind climate just beyond saying that somebody needs to actually take on Team Urgency's role and try and play the game more effectively, but we have tens of millions of people in the United States, in the United States alone, that are very concerned about climate change. Most of those people, if you ask them, what do you do for climate change? They'll say, I recycle, which has virtually nothing to do with climate change. And so we have done an awful job of getting the information out to people to motivate them and to help them understand what they could actually be doing that would make a difference. And that's the core idea behind climate chess. And the point and the idea there is there's so much information. We know that there are these 500 pieces on the board from Team Urgency, but they're totally uncoordinated. What if we could coordinate them using AI tools like Hawkeye? So we're telling this person, the best use of your time this week is to go and testify in the Texas science committee that is adopting new science textbooks. And if we could get 50 people there, it could have a real impact on what Texas's next generation of science textbooks say about climate change, which in turn affects all the other textbooks in the US. So yeah, there's a massive lack of information about what people can actually do that turns into collective action. And there's just this ridiculous information overload where you can just sink in this stuff every single day. And so we need to figure out how to solve some of those problems. And I think that Hawkeye can help with that.